العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان. These nights he's more alone than ever, but he's praying for us, so we pray together. We left him alone and broke his heart, but he prays and asks for forgiveness for us. He cries and mourns his father Ali. We'll mourn with you, Ya Mahdi. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان. Is decided, I know this. Ya Mahdi, I pray I'm on your list. Just need one moment to be noticed. Ya Allah, I pray you accept my excuses. I've been so sinful and so foolish. With your love I can get through this. I need your love and your affection, Mahdi. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان. These nights he's more alone than ever, but he's praying for us, so we pray together. We left him alone and broke his heart, but he prays and asks for forgiveness for us. He cries and mourns his father Ali. We'll mourn with you, Ya Mahdi. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي صاحب الزمان. العجل العجل يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان. Is decided, I know this. Ya Mahdi, I pray I'm on your list. Just need one moment to be noticed. Ya Allah, I pray you accept my excuses. I've been so sinful and so foolish. With your love I can get through this. I need your love and your affection. Those sins withdraw down tribulation.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين ذرية بعضها من بعض والله سميع عليم. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Out of the billions of creation, the billions of people that are born and die, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose a small number, small group of people to be the role models, to be the representatives of God on earth, to be the individuals that guide people and lead the way so that people can live a life of God consciousness, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and live a life of obedience where they respect one another, they love one another, and at the same time they get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These individuals are the prophets and the families of the prophets. Inna Allah astafa Adama wa Nuhan wa ala Ibrahim wa ala Imran ala al-alamin. Allah chose Adam and Nuh and Ibrahim and the family of Imran over the world. And from amongst the family that was chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the holy household, the purified house that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purifies in the Quran. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. That is the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. The household that we are proud to consider ourselves the followers of this household, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Now, the Ahlul Bayt, they were formed and they were brought together because of one honorable lady. And that lady is the lady that we are commemorating tonight, As-Sayyida Khadija alayha salam, the mother of the believers, al-Mu'mineen, the wife, the first wife of the Prophet and the favorite wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. The lady who believed in the Prophet and the lady who sacrificed everything that she had for Rasulullah and for the sake of the religion of Islam. A lady who shattered the glass ceiling of her time, who was not only successful in her faith and being a wife, but she was one of the greatest business ladies of time. Where today when we remember Khadija, they say that she owned about 10% of the market in Mecca at that time. An extremely successful lady, an extremely accomplished lady, an extremely honorable lady who also later on becomes the wife of the Prophet, the first supporter and believer in the Prophet, and the lady that gave all her wealth for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is Sayyida Khadija. The 10th of the month of Ramadan marks the death anniversary of this honorable lady. And the year that Sayyida Khadija passed away was a very difficult year for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. She was dear to the heart of the Prophet. Where after her death, Rasulullah called the year that she died in as Amil Huzun, the year of sorrow. Because in that same year, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam lost two of his supporters. One was his uncle Abu Talib, and the second was Lady Khadija. And this was heartbreaking for Rasulullah. This is why after the death of Khadija, Rasulullah knew that he has no safe haven in Mecca. And it's time for him to think of a plan to leave Mecca, because his supporters, his two biggest supporters, Abu Talib and Khadija, are no longer with him. Khadija was the wife of the Prophet and the mother of the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allah says in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And those who say, "Oh Allah, grant us from our azwaj, from our spouses and our progeny, joy for our eyes, and make from us the imams and the leaders of the pious." Jibreel comes to Rasulullah. He tells him the ta'wil of this verse, the deeper meaning of this verse. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. This is the dua of Rasulullah. And those who say, "Oh Allah, grant us from our spouses." Rasulullah tells him the azwaj in this verse is Khadija, and the dhurriya in this verse is Fatima. قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ, joy for our eyes. Those are Hassan and Hussein. وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. That is Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. This great lady that accomplished so much, unfortunately today, you don't see her name mentioned. Unfortunately today, you see history and the Muslims have oppressed this lady. Just like Abu Talib was oppressed, Sayyidah Khadija is also oppressed. A lady who was the first to believe. A lady who gave all of her wealth. She sacrificed all of her wealth for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Today there's no remembrance of her. Today no one talks about Khadija. And you see the names of the other wives are mentioned, with all due respect to the other wives. But Khadija is greater. And these are by the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Khadija, she dared challenge the status quo. Khadija shattered the glass ceiling of her time. Khadija became extremely successful in everything. To be the first to believe, that's not easy. To be the first to pay, to be the first to give, that's not easy. Probably many people, they come and they believe later. Many people will come and financially support later. But to be the first, that takes guts. That takes someone who has strong iman and resilience. And that was Khadija alayhi salam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he goes to the ghar. He goes to the cave of Hira. Jibreel comes to him. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. خلق الإنسان من علق. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Jibreel tells him, "You're a messenger. You're a prophet." And Rasulullah, from that moment, right away he accepted that honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. Never hesitating, not one single second. And the hadith says, Rasulullah was walking back home. And as he's walking back home, the rocks and the stones, they say salam to Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Even the stones, they would say salam to him. And this is not something strange. Allah talks about Dawood. Allah says that when Dawood used to do dua, he used to supplicate, the mountains would supplicate with him. Ya jibalu awwabi ma'ahu wa tayr. The jibal, the mountains would pray with Dawood. So Rasulullah is walking, and everything in creation would say salam to him. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. He enters into the house. Khadija, she sees the radiating light out of the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. She tells him, "I see a light in your face." He tells her, "This is the light of prophethood. I'm a prophet. Allah has sent me as a messenger." She tells him at that moment, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu annaka Rasulullah." She did not hesitate 1 second. She was the first to believe. This is why there's no shadow of a doubt. There's no question. There were two that were the first to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. From the women, it was Khadija, and from the men, it was Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who was the first to believe in and support and also give everything that he has for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. When the Prophet was delivering the message, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands Rasulullah, فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Go and fulfill the message. Do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent you to do. You're a messenger of God, and ignore what the mushrikeen do. Rasulullah, he goes and he stands on the mountain of Safa and he says, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تُفْلِحُوا. Say La ilaha illallah and you will be victorious. Then he goes on the Marwa and he says the same. قُولُوا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ تُفْلِحُوا. Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and several of those wicked men, they gathered. Abu Jahl, he took a rock and he threw it at the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And the Prophet's face began to bleed. And they tried to harass and abuse the Prophet. Rasulullah, he left. He left them. He escapes and he goes to the cave. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib found out where the Prophet had gone, where others did not know. So he goes and he knocks on the door of Khadija and he tells her, this is what they have done to Rasulullah. So he goes and Khadija, she takes whatever she could take with her to cure the Prophet and take some food for Rasulullah. And they both go and climb the mountain. And there, the hadith says that Khadija, she was calling out, Ya Rasulallah, Ya Rasulallah. She keeps calling him. She's worried, where is he? He's injured. Here, the hadith says Jibreel was sitting next to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And he tells him, Jibreel tells Rasulullah, Ya Rasulallah, ajib nida'a Khadija. Oh Rasulullah, answer the call of Khadija because the angels are crying for the cries of Khadija. Because the angels cannot stand Khadija crying and waiting for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. So Rasulullah, he answers her. And then she enters on him and she sees Rasulullah is crying. And he does not allow his tears to hit the ground. Every tear that comes out, he wipes it. He wipes it. She tells him, Ya Rasulullah, why are you doing that? He tells her, I'm afraid if my tears hit the ground, these people are going to be tortured. I was sent as a mercy to mankind. I was sent as a rahmah and not as a prophet that is known that his people were tortured and punished. And then she takes him, they go together to the house, and Quraysh, they come and they start throwing the rocks at the house of Rasulullah. And Khadija comes out and she says, أَتُضْرَبُ الْحُرَّةُ فِي بَيْتِهَا? A free lady, rocks are thrown at the home of a free lady in her home, and they feel the shame and they leave them. These were the challenges, the everyday challenges that Rasulullah and Khadija faced so that Islam could be delivered to you and I. So that we can pray, so that we can live a life of dignity and honor, so that we are not doing sujood to idols. These are the sacrifices of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. This is why when Jibreel would descend upon the Prophet, Allah would send a salam to Khadija. A special salam to Khadija, where Jibreel, he would say, Ya Muhammad, where Jibreel would say, Ya Rasulallah, balligh, inna Allah yuqra Khadija salam. Allah sends his salam to Khadija. Ya Khadija, هذه يا محمد هذه خديجة أتتك فاقرأها السلام من ربها وبشرها ببيت في الجنة من قصب لا صخب فيه ولا نصب. And then Rasulullah, he delivers the salam. Ya Khadija, hada Jibra'il. Oh Khadija, this is Jibra'il. He's sending the salam of Allah. So what does Khadija reply? Khadija says, Allah huwa as-salam wa minhu as-salam wa ala Jibra'il as-salam. God, He is the salam, and from Him is the salam, and peace be upon the angel Jibra'il. What was so special about this lady Khadija? What made her so unique? Khadija was different. Khadija is remembered until today. Khadija was a lady that dared to be different. It's really hard to go against the wave. It's really hard when you see hundreds and thousands of people, they're all doing one thing, to go against that. It's not easy. Everyone wants to ride the bandwagon. Everyone wants to do what's convenient. To go against the stream, it's very difficult. Khadija was one of those ladies that managed to do that. And there are several ways she stands out. One of them was through her modesty. Even in pre-Islamic times, even before the religion of Islam, Khadija was known for her chastity and her modesty. And this is, the hijab is not something that just the religion of Islam came with. Islam came and it agreed upon the hijab that was already established in religions prior to the religion of Islam. Right now, when you look at the picture of Maryam, Mary, is she covered up? She's dressed in modesty. Right now, the Judaism, Christianity, other religions, they come and they say hijab is a part of society. It was something that was accepted. Hijab is not only Islam. Hijab is something that was pre-Islamic. And Khadija was known, one of her names was At-Tahira, the pure one. She was pure. Even prior to the religion of Islam. This is one. Second, Khadija was a successful lady. Khadija didn't allow the hijab to limit her. Today, some people, they have the idea that if a lady is wearing hijab, if a lady is modest, then that means no one should see her and she should never see anyone. This is not true. A lady is able to be herself because the whole purpose of hijab is not to limit a lady. The purpose of hijab is to shed light on the personality of the lady and remove the attention from her body. Because some try to take advantage of the body and the looks of the lady. The purpose of the hijab is to highlight who the lady is, the personality. And of course, hijab is for men and women. But when we're focusing on women, some people have the idea that hijab is going to limit a lady from reaching her potential. And that is not true. Yes, some cultures practice it in that way, but that is un-Islamic. Because if that was the message of Islam, then you wouldn't see Fatima al-Zahra come out in the masjid of Rasulullah and deliver a sermon. You wouldn't hear of the role of Sayyidah Khadija. You would never hear of the role of Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam saving the religion of Islam. Right? So hijab is not meant to limit a lady and keep her tied up in a place where she has no influence on society. She has no role. She has no personality. No. Hijab sheds light on the personality of a lady. But today, society, they ignore the personality, they ignore the accomplishments, they ignore the knowledge and what a lady has to offer, and they shed light only on her body. This is the oppression towards the women that we see today in societies that claim to be societies that fight for the rights of women, where the body of the woman is being taken advantage of and being used. So Khadija alayha salam, she was a lady who was an accomplished lady. She was a lady who was wealthy. She had merchants and she was a merchant herself. And she used to trade and she used to make a lot of money. And that is how she met Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. She had, of course, she herself would not go in the trade. She would not travel because of her status. However, Khadija, she would send individuals. She had two individuals who were working with her, Masira wa Nasih. And they discover a talent, a hidden talent in the community, and that was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Someone who was honest, someone who was truthful, as-sadiq al-amin. So Khadija, she says, what better person to use for my trade, to use for my business than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And he goes on a business trip and he comes back bringing much more profits that were anticipated. They were anticipating some sort of profit. Rasulullah was very successful, and this is a message for us that if you want to have a successful business, be truthful, be honest. Rasulullah was honest, and everyone was attracted to him. Everyone fell in love with him, and even Khadija was very impressed. She saw that he was very impressive, a very impressive character. A third point about Khadija alayhi salam is that Khadija was a free lady, expressing her likes and her dislikes. You know, many of the wealthy men of Quraysh, they came and they proposed and they asked to marry Khadija alayhi salam. Many of them, they came and they wanted to marry her. Abu Jahl, Uqba ibn Mu'ayt, Abu Sufyan, they come and they propose and they ask for her hand in marriage. But Khadija was a free-minded lady. Khadija was not fooled by the wealth. Khadija was not fooled by the money. Today, a lot of the failed marriages, a lot of the failed relationships, they start because we are fooled. We see someone having a nice car, someone who only looks, and that is what makes us be attracted to them. And then later on, we come and we see this is nothing. There's no substance. There's no personality. There's no akhlaq. There's no iman. Khadija, if she would have wanted a rich person to marry, she could have got that very easily. But Khadija chose Rasulullah over all else. Even though Rasulullah was not very wealthy. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi was an orphan. أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. Rasulullah was an orphan. Some people were not even interested in an orphan. He has no supporters and no defenders. But Khadija alayhi salam, she saw the treasure in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. She saw that Rasulullah was someone who was worthy, and she showed interest in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. She showed interest. And then Abu Talib, he comes and he proposes to Khadija, and she ends up marrying him because she saw signs in him. When Rasulullah would travel, Masira and Nasih, they come later on and they tell her, we saw signs. The rabbis and the Christian priests, they look at the signs of this man and they're all attracted to him. Yes, because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he had several signs. One of the signs is that there was a cloud above his head. One of the signs was that he was a blessing wherever he goes. And the Jews and the Christians, they knew that. That's why they were living in the Arabian Peninsula. They were in search of this last prophet. Allah says in the Quran, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابِ يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. Those who we have given them the book, the people of the book, they know the signs of Rasulullah very well, just like they know their own children. So one day, a rabbi comes and he tells her, who is that man? She tells him, this is Muhammad. And this was, of course, before the prophethood. And the man, he comes and he tries to look at the neck of the prophet because Rasulullah had a khatam, a mark on his neck, khatam al-nubuwah, the seal of prophethood. And she tells him, if his uncles see you trying to touch him like that, they will destroy you. But he tells her, this man is an orphan. And this man is going to be a prophet and he's going to be great. This is what we have in our books. So Khadija, she saw the greatness of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. That's why when he announced his message, right away she accepted. Right away, without any hesitation, she accepted. Another very important point that made Khadija stand out was that Khadija gave all of her wealth for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Everything. Imagine someone so wealthy, she comes and she puts all of her wealth at the disposal of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. This is why Rasulullah, he says in a statement, ما نفعني مال قط مثل ما نفعني مال خديجة. No wealth has benefited me the way the wealth of Khadija benefited me. Why? Because Khadija was the first to give. Later on, probably others, they came and they gave more. Maybe other people came and gave to the Prophet. But in the first day when no one was giving, Khadija came and she put all of her wealth in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And he would use it to uplift the Muslim community. He would use it to help the poor. He would use it to spread the message of Islam. One day, Halima Sa'diyah, Halima was the lady that nursed the Prophet. After many years, Halima comes back, and that year there was a drought in her village. There was no rain. And Halima Sa'diyah, she comes back poor. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he tells Khadija, and she gives Halima Sa'diyah 1 camel and 40 sheep, just for the honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. She gives it for the sake of Rasulullah, out of love for the Holy Prophet. This is why Rasulullah, he has his famous hadith, Buni al-Islam. The religion of Islam was built by 2 things. بِسَيْفِ عَلِيٍّ وَمَالِ خَدِيجَةٍ, with the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib and the wealth of Sayyida Khadija. Khadija alayha salam was dear to the heart of the Prophet because she gave the Prophet something that no one else gave him. And that was, she gave him children. إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّ شَانِئَكَ هُوَ الْأَبْتَرُ. This is why the Prophet would always remember her. Rasulullah was deeply attached to her. He was in love with her. Many years later, many years after her death, Rasulullah would always remember Khadija this and Khadija that. He's always talking about Khadija. So one of the wives of the Prophet, she comes to him, she tells him, Ya Rasulullah, you keep remembering this ajuz. You keep remembering this old lady. Allah has replaced you and gave you younger. Allah has given you other ladies. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi says, Wallah ma abdalani Allah khayran minha. By God, no, I did not receive. God did not give me women that were better than Khadija. قَدْ آمَنَتْ بِي إِذْ كَفَرَ بِيَ النَّاسِ. She believed in me when others rejected me. وَصَدَّقَتْنِي إِذْ كَذَّبَنِي النَّاسِ. And she saw me as a truthful person when others accused me of being a liar. وَوَاسَتْنِي بِمَالِهَا إِذْ حَرَمَنِي النَّاسِ. And she gave me her wealth when others did not give me. وَرَزَقَنِي اللَّهُ أَوْلَادُهَا وَحَرَمَنِي أَوْلَادُ النَّاسِ. And Allah gave me children from her and did not give me children from the other wives. Subhanallah. There's a miracle behind this. Rasulullah had many wives, but they did not have children. Maria al-Qibtiyya, she had Ibrahim, but Ibrahim died when he was 18 months old. Allah wanted the progeny of Rasulullah, إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ, to be through Rasulullah and Khadija. And that passes through Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra. All the children of the Prophet, they go back to this progeny. They go back to As-Sayyida Khadija alayha salam. This is why Khadija, she was very dear to the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet was very hurt when he saw that Khadija was ill, that Khadija sacrificed everything that she had for the sake of Islam. Khadija gave away all her wealth. The day that she was dying, she didn't even have a kafan. She didn't even have the shroud to be buried in. This was Khadija. Imagine a lady that gave away all of her wealth for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Rasulullah, he enters on Khadija and she dies in Sha'b Abu Talib. There were 3 years that the Muslims, they were excommunicated from the community. And in that final year, Abu Talib passes away and As-Sayyida Khadija. And Rasulullah was very heartbroken. He enters on Khadija and he sees that she is in her last moments and she is dying. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he begins to cry because Rasulullah was deeply attached to her. You know that the Prophet, when he was married to Khadija, he did not marry any other woman. But later on, after the death of Khadija, he married other women and he had multiple wives at the same time. But when he was married to Khadija, he did not have any other wife because there was no need. Later on, he married other women for a social reason, for a political reason, for a financial reason. But when he was married to Khadija, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he remained loyal to her. And when she was dying, Rasulullah, he enters on her and he sees that Khadija is in her last moments, and he tells her, oh Khadija, he starts telling her words to comfort her. He says his famous hadith that there are 4 women that are Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, 4 women that have been chosen above all women in the universe. Those were Asiya bint Muzahim, the wife of Pharaoh who dared to believe, Maryam ibnatu Imran, the mother of Jesus, and Khadija bint Khuwaylid, and Fatima bint Muhammad. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he sits next to her and he tells her, oh Khadija, Jibreel has come to me and he has told me that you have a house, a beautiful house in paradise, and you will not feel any pain in that house. This is a house that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised you, oh Khadija. Khadija, she tells Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, I have several things I want to say. One, Asma bint Umays was also there. She says, I'm afraid right now, I'm dying. She begins to cry. He tells her, why are you crying? The ladies, they tell her, why are you crying? She says, I'm crying for Fatima. And she points to her daughter, Fatima. And Asma tells her, why are you crying for Fatima? We will take care of her. She tells her, when a lady on her wedding night, she wants her mother to be with her. But I'm not going to be with Khadija. I'm not going to be with Fatima. And I'm worried for my daughter Fatima. She's going to become an orphan. So Asma, she promises Khadija. She tells her, oh Khadija, I promise that I will be there for Fatima. And this is why many years later, when Fatima Zahra is about to get married, there were many women that were gathered around Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam. Rasulullah, he tells them to leave. I want the Abba of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi to be as my kafan in the grave, because she did not have anything. She had given away everything. So Fatima Zahra alayha salam, she goes and she asks Rasulullah, she says, Ya Abatah, Ya Rasulullah, my mother Khadija, she gave everything for your sake. Now she's embarrassed to ask you for one thing, and that is the cloak, so that she could be wrapped in, and that will be what protects her. And according to our narrations, Jibreel comes down with a cloak from heaven that Khadija is wrapped in. And they wrap Khadija with a cloak, a garment from paradise, because she had given up everything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, لما توفيت خديجة جعلت فاطمة تلوذ برسول الله. He says, when Khadija passed away, Fatima Zahra was a young child, and she began to cry, and she holds on to her father, Rasulullah. She has just lost her mother, and she begins to cry. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, جعلت فاطمة تلوذ برسول الله وتدور حوله وتقول يا أبتاه أين أمي. She cries and she says, oh father, where's my mother? I have just lost my mother. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Imam Sadiq, he says, فَنَزَلَ جِبْرَائِيل. Jibreel came down at that moment. فَقَالَ لَهُ رَبُّكَ يَأْمُرُكَ أَن تَقْرَأْ فَاطِمَةَ السَّلَامِ. Your Lord orders you to send salam to Fatima. وَتَقُولُ لَهَا إِنَّ أُمُّكِ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن قَصَبٍ كَعَابُهُ مِن ذَهَبٍ وَعُمْدُهُ يَاقُوتٌ أحمر بين آسيا ومريم ابنة عمران. Your Lord tells you to send salam to Fatima and tell her that your mother is in paradise. She is with Asiya and she is with Maryam ibnatu Imran. And Fatima, once she heard that, she was comforted. She said, Ya Rasulallah, inna Allah huwa salam. وَمِنْهُ السَّلَامُ وَإِلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. God is the salam, and from him is the salam, and to him is the salam. This is Sayyida Khadija. This is this honorable lady, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. We give you all the condolences for the death anniversary of this honorable lady. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلوات. Let us raise our hands in dua. يا علي يا عظيم يا غفور يا رحيم أنت الرب العظيم الذي ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. وهذا شهر عظمته وكرمته وشرفته وفضلته على الشهور، وهو الشهر الذي فرضت صيامه عليه، وهو شهر رمضان الذي أنزلت فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان، وجعلت فيه ليلة القدر وجعلتها خيرا من 1000 شهر. فيا ذا المن ولا يمن عليك، من علي بفكاك رقبتي من النار في من تمن عليه، وأدخلني الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.